Looking back on my fitness journey, and I've been doing this over a decade, there are so many mistakes that I've done when I first started out that now looking back, I wish somebody just grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me and said, "Girl, what are you doing?" I did whatever I could in order to look good. Any diets, workout regimes, habits that promised to get me results quick, promised to help me lose weight, drop body fat, look lean, look toned. I was right on it without any consideration what that actually is going to do to my long-term health. In today's video, I want to share the fitness mistakes that I've made that I thought were healthy, but in fact were only harming my hormones. The first one being fasted cardio. The idea behind it is that when you go out working on an empty stomach first thing in the morning, then you're gonna burn more calories. You are burning through your body fat as opposed to the food that you've just ate. And supposedly it's supposed to make you lose weight and body fat faster. On the surface, that actually might make sense. It's as if you are sweating off the fat. You haven't eaten, so you're tapping into your fat stores. And when I was doing fasted cardio, I felt so accomplished because like, hey, look at me heading into the gym for 6 a.m. doing 30 minutes on a Stairmaster before I even got to eat. Oh boy. But here's where fasted cardio was doing me a disservice. When we are working out on an empty stomach first thing in the morning, especially when it's high intensity exercise or cardio, we're putting massive stress on our body. In the morning time, our cortisol, our main stress hormone, is elevated as it is, which is really normal and actually beneficial. It helps us get out of bed. But when you pair that with fasting, low blood sugar levels, you're spiking that cortisol even further. Your body needs energy to exercise. And when you don't eat, then it's going to tap into your body stores, such as tissues and glycogen, so that it can create that energy. For us women, especially in the reproductive years, energy availability is so vital. When the body senses that it doesn't have enough fuel, it starts to shut off the non-essential functions, such as reproduction. And this is where your periods can go all haywired, or in the worst case, disappear completely, like it happens to me. The truth is, you don't burn more calories doing fasted cardio. And even if you did, is it actually worth it? Is it worth losing your period or feeling exhausted and anxious all the time? What I do now is, even if I am working out in the morning, which I actually do really enjoy, it's not like I'm gonna have a full Irish breakfast at 5 in the morning, because that would make me feel lethargic and so sick. But I do ensure that I eat something, whether that is a banana, dates, or some rice cakes. It doesn't have to be big. Even a small snack such as a medium banana before your training can indicate to your body that we have enough energy available so that it can continue working optimally as it should. Number 2 is intermittent fasting. So this was another trend that I jumped on to when I was at the beginning of my fitness journey, essentially to try and save more calories for later on in the day. And also by reading research that by eating later on in the day, I will increase my insulin sensitivity, I will be more alert and focused, and it will also, in the long run, help me to lose weight quicker, because essentially I'm shortening down the window of eating. So what intermittent fasting is, there's all different kind of protocols around it, but the one that I was doing was 16-8. You fast for 16 hours and then you have an eating window of eating for 8 hours. That meant that not only was I doing fasted cardio, so I wasn't eating anything because I was doing intermittent fasting when I was training in the morning, and it wasn't just cardio, I was also lifting weights, but also I wasn't refueling after my training sessions. So my body was now tapping into breaking down both my muscles and the tissue in order to get the energy from somewhere. Why is this problematic? Because you might think, well, there is tons of research on intermittent fasting and that it in fact does give the benefits of better weight loss, better insulin sensitivity, more focus, more alertness. Majority of those studies are done on men who don't have hormones that cycle throughout the month. They can reset every 24 hours. Their stress response is a lot better, which means that they are suited to things like restriction and fasting, and they can handle them with better ease. What was happening to me is that I was going hours without food, which was putting a lot of stress on my body. My blood sugar was all over the place. When I finally got to eat my meal, I was absolutely starving, and by nighttime I was that hungry because the hunger was catching up on me that I found it so hard not to overeat. I was fighting so hard with myself not to give into the temptations. The cravings were just crazy, and there was often times where I just didn't have enough willpower to push through those cravings, and it ended up in me completely binging at night and feeling so guilty for it the following day. Intermittent fasting just simply doesn't work for women. I know it from my own experience. I know it from working with clients. It's now being more documented that when women do intermittent fasting, it just works against them. And now what I do is I start my day by eating breakfast within the first hour of waking up. If I do have a training session planned, I will have a small snack like I mentioned. If it's a rest day, then I will get up, get myself ready, and make a balanced plate. So I will have protein, healthy fats, and fiber. And by making that swap and decision to actually eat as soon as I wake up, my energy is better, my mood is better, my hormones are working properly, I'm finding my appetite easier to control, I'm no longer getting cravings, I'm no longer starving when it comes for lunch or for dinner. And overall, I just find sticking to healthy eating a lot easier because I am not depriving myself of the food when my body needs it most, when I'm most active. Third mistake that I did was always choosing the low calorie, zero calorie, fat-free alternatives to food. I always believed that fat will make you fat, so I avoided it at all costs. I would eat the fat-free yogurt instead of the full fat, the skimmed milk instead of the full fat milk, choosing the low calorie salad dressings or just using lemon juice, and choosing zero calorie everything. Drinks, syrups, condiments. I thought I was being so smart by cutting out all the fats from my diet because at the end of the day, fat is the most calorie dense. So by cutting out fats, I was technically saving myself a whole lot of calories. But the problem with that is when you're eating low fat everything or zero calorie everything, you're not giving your body the essential fats it needs for hormone productions. And then you're wondering why your periods are gone all haywire, why they're irregular, painful, short, heavy, or missing altogether. What I also didn't realize is that fats actually help you absorb nutrients. So although I was bulking up my meals with a lot of vegetables, I wasn't absorbing all the nutrients that they can potentially provide me because we do need a certain level of fats in order for those nutrients to be absorbed. And fat makes you full. It signals satiety to your brain. When I was eating low fat everything, I always found myself hungry. My blood sugar was all over the place, and when I would eat, I would crash. And because I would eat a meal and it wasn't hitting the satiety buttons that it needed to hit, I found myself being hungry an hour later, and that created so much preoccupation with food because if I was always hungry but at the same time always restricting, it was like this vicious cycle. So I make sure that I have some sort of healthy fat in my breakfast, in my lunch, in my dinner, and often in my snacks as well. So including things like oily fish such as salmon, sardines, nuts, seeds like chia seed, flaxseed, walnuts, things like olive oil, avocados, and it's so easy to add them into meals because there's such a variety of them. So for example, for breakfast, having smoked salmon, full eggs instead of just egg whites. For lunch, adding some avocado into a salad or a stir fry. For dinner, sprinkling your meal with some flax seeds, pumpkin seeds, or even making a dressing with like olive oil and lemon. And I feel so much better for it. I'm more satiated. My meals actually keep me full for hours. And I know that I'm supporting my hormones adequately because I have regular symptom-free periods. The fourth fitness mistake that I regret is suppressing my hunger with coffee. I would wake up hungry, but because I was doing intermittent fasting, I was trying to suppress that, and I figured that caffeine is actually a great suppressant of hunger, and it worked because it meant that I could push through that morning right up until noon before I could have my first meal. And the more hungry I was, the more coffee I drank. The problem is that hunger is a vital signal for your body that it just needs more energy. And when we try to suppress it, then we're also suppressing a lot of our bodily functions. Another thing with coffee is that it's a stimulant and it spikes up cortisol. I was already putting myself in a state of chronic cortisol by doing intermittent fasting, on top of that pairing it with high intensity workouts, and now I was also adding caffeine into that mix. I'm sure that you can imagine that the mix of those three was throwing my cortisol way out of balance. Plus, drinking coffee all the time was really affecting my digestion. I felt myself bloated no matter what I ate, and it was also giving me a lot of anxiety because there's only a certain amount of coffee you can drink before it starts impacting your nervous system, and I'm quite sensitive to caffeine as it is. I didn't cut out coffee. I still absolutely love my coffee, but now I approach it from like a different perspective. First of all, I never have coffee first thing in the morning. I actually allow myself to just naturally wake up a little bit before needing a drug essentially to help me kickstart my day. I will hydrate. I'll have some water, usually with a little bit of sea salt. If I'm training, coconut water, and those natural electrolytes help me feel more alert. And then I will eat something, and then I will have my coffee. Like, I still enjoy it. I still have it in the morning. I just don't have it first thing in the morning as soon as my eyelid opens, which I used to do. And I also make sure that I have some food sitting in my stomach. It helps with my digestion. It means that I'm not having so much of like that acidity sitting in my stomach, and it also helps to bring that blood sugar back to baseline before I pack it with caffeine on top of that. The fifth fitness mistake that I've done, which I regret, is using MyFitnessPal to tell me how much calories I should eat. And I know this is going to be a controversial one because there's so many people out there that absolutely praise calorie counting apps. But here is where my problem lies. It's not that the calorie counting apps are inherently bad and they are the problem, but they were just simply never designed with the female body in mind. I used the app to tell me how many calories I should be eating, which gave me an estimate of something like 1200 calories. And by the way, 1200 calories would not feed a toddler, never mind a woman in her reproductive years, and never mind a woman who is active and training multiple times per week. What I failed to recognize is that it's based off some generic algorithm. Like, yes, you put on your weight, your height, your activity levels, but at the same time, that app doesn't know your stress levels, how's your sleep quality. It doesn't know anything about your genetics and your metabolism. It doesn't take into consideration that women need more calories and their nutrient needs change throughout the month. On the days that I was super active, I would eat the same amount of calories. On the days that I was less active, I would eat the same amount of calories. On the days that I was sick and I did absolutely no training, I would eat the same amount of calories. I was starving. I didn't actually listen to that because I would eat the same amount of calories. I was so disconnected from my body because for so long I suppressed my natural hunger signals, and over time your body just adapts to that. And I failed to recognize when I was actually hungry and needed food, when I was actually satisfied, because instead I was following what some generic app told me to eat. My problem with calorie counting apps is that it assumes that you should eat the same amount of calories every single day. But as women, our calorie needs change. As we head into the second half phase of our cycle, so those 10 to 7 days leading up to our period, our metabolism increases by 7 to 11%. This means that on average, we are burning up to 150 to 300 calories extra a day, which means that we need additional food to sustain all the bodily functions in order to have loads of energy, in order for our mood to be stable, in order for our periods to be regular, symptom-free. However, when we ignore that, and ignore those biological needs, then our body starts to rebel against us. Not only do we end up exhausted, but over time we develop a poor relationship with food because we are constantly choosing restriction over providing the body what it actually needs. I'm not saying that calorie counting is inherently bad, because I do want to highlight that it has given me a huge amount of knowledge in terms of the calorie content and the macro content in food. It allowed me to classify foods that are high in protein, that are high in carbs, high in fats. It built a lot of self-awareness. It also gave me accountability. However, I believe that calorie counting should be approached with flexibility rather than rigidity. The last fitness mistake that I want to talk about is going hours without eating after my training. So if I worked out in the morning, I obviously wouldn't eat beforehand because intermittent fasting, and then I wouldn't eat afterwards because intermittent fasting. So I was going hours without eating, and obviously I was going about my day. Even if I did work out in the evening, I wouldn't eat anything afterwards because by that time I worked out, I would have already had my calories allocated on my fitness pal, and it meant that I just didn't have enough calories available to fuel myself. But your body needs nutrients after training. Your muscles need protein in order to recover. Your body needs carbohydrates in order to replenish the glycogen stores. And your hormones need food in order to indicate to the body that it's safe and that it has enough energy available. When you work out and then don't eat for hours, you're compounding your stress. You're indicating to your body that, hey, we just expanded a ton loads of energy and there's no food coming to refuel. Since learning how much harm I'm doing by not refueling after my training, I now ensure that I have a balanced meal, including protein, including carbohydrates, including fats in my post-workout meal, especially protein and carbohydrates. After your training, those two things are going to be massive. I feel like people do really emphasize on the protein aspects for building muscle, for muscle recovery, but carbohydrates are super essential as well. At the end of the day, we would have lost a lot of glycogen by training. Carbohydrates are the biggest thing when it comes to period loss. We often don't give the body enough of it, and it just feels like it's in this survival mode, in this famine mode. And by giving it carbohydrates, especially around training sessions, you're really supporting your reproductive health in that way. None of these things in isolation would have led me to lose my period or destroy my hormones, but combine all of them together, it forms a perfect storm to drain my energy, leave me bloated, and mess up my periods. But underneath all these behaviors was a mindset problem. I believed that less food was better, more exercise was better. Hunger was something to overcome and not listen and lean into. I felt like I couldn't trust my body, so I needed apps and rules in order to control it. Discipline and willpower was more important than how I actually felt in my body. And it was that mindset that fueled the behavior that kept me stuck in these patterns, even though my body was screaming at me with all the signs and symptoms that my health wasn't in a thriving place. And getting my hormones back to balance meant that I had to dismantle all these beliefs. I had to learn that food is not the enemy, it's fuel, that it's going to keep my energy, my mood, my satiety at its best. I also had to learn that the signals that my body was giving me, such as fatigue, hunger, irritability, this was all information that I just wasn't giving my body what it really needed. That health isn't about having visible abs or being as lean as possible, but it's about having energy, it's about having peace with food and your body, and hormones that allow me to have regular symptom-free periods.